John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. John, they are certainly at the very least doing their due diligence here.
Yeah, they are, and they should. I mean, it's pretty clear that the organization is not sold on Sam Bradford as a long-term future, and they shouldn't be. So this is what you have to do. And it's not necessarily indicating, hey, we're going to take a quarterback. We're going to do everything we can to take a quarterback, because I think lost in the shuffle of visits with Goff and Wentz and Lynch is they also visited with Kevin Hogan, who's regarded as a mid to late round possible developmental type. So they're looking all over, looking under every rock. And at some point, I don't think there's any question they're going to take quarterback in this draft, but it doesn't necessarily have to be one of the three top ones.
Yeah, we talked a lot about this the last couple of days, but, okay, they're at number 8, and Paxton Lynch is on the board. Do you take Paxton Lynch?
You know, that's a good one. I definitely take Wentz if he somehow falls to 8, which he's not. Goff, which is a little bit more likely, but still unlikely. Those two names, no question. Lynch, it becomes a little bit shakier simply because I don't think he's worthy of that selection right now. He's a little bit raw. Probably should go in the mid-first round. But if you like him, you understand he's not going to start this year anyway. And if you have his ceiling as a player as sort of developing into a Pro Bowl type, an All-Pro type, you almost have to take him, even if it is a little bit soon, because you have Bradford locked up for 2016, and he can sort of learn, and hopefully you have a development where all of a sudden he can take over as the bridge from Sam Bradford, and you have Chase Daniel as a long-term backup. So I think it depends on what they think of him as a player and what they think that ceiling eventually is. If they think it's really, really high, I think you almost have to pull the trigger.
You know, I don't know off the top of my head, I'm going to pull up your mock draft here in a second, but how many teams behind Philadelphia in, you know, within 5-6 picks would want to move up to 8 if a quarterback was there? I mean, are the Eagles just trying to basically show teams that we have an interest in a quarterback so that if you want one, you're going to have to call us on draft day?
Well, I think the one team you look at is St. Louis, and it's so interesting. It's ironic because these two teams traded, and they're both still looking for quarterbacks. And the Rams more so than the Eagles. They're desperate. No matter what they say, they're not going to move forward with Case Keenum as a starter in their first year back in Los Angeles. That would be a colossal disaster. So they want to get a quarterback, and the bottom line is they're sitting at 15. They're not going to get one there unless they throw out their back reaching for somebody like Connor Cook in the first round. They're not going to get a quarterback unless they trade up. And the realization is you probably have to get past the Eagles to guarantee yourself certainly a Jared Goff if he were to fall. Again, it's not even worth throwing Wentz out there because he's going to be long gone. So if the Rams want one of those three guys, they're going to have to move up most likely at some point.
Yeah, John McMullen's with us, 97.3 ESPN.com. Well, I'm going to ask you, if these quarterbacks are in the draft last year, are we talking about top 10 players?
It's a good question. It depends. A lot of people say, things change when you go through the process. So if you go back to early in this, there's no way any of these names are being bandied about with Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. But I think if Carson Wentz had a similar pro day, he would have been in the top 10 mix. Not saying he would have been in the Winston Mariota mix, but he would have been a high draft choice simply because of his skill set and his ability to throw the football. So I think, yes, he would have eventually sort of risen up to be that type of guy. I'm not so sure that Goff would have been there. Pretty sure Paxton Lynch would have been a later probably 20 to 32. But as a whole, all three, in my mind, are not similar prospects, certainly to Winston and not even Mariota, who I think has a lot more holes. But I think Winston is probably the best quarterback prospect there's been since Andrew Luck, and I think he proved that last season. I think he's going to be a star in this league.
Yesterday, Scott Wright was on with us, and he said this is a good year to get a developmental quarterback, meaning a third-round, fourth-round, fifth-round pick. Do you agree that maybe not at number 8? I think we all think the Eagles might take a quarterback, but if there's one guy at 8 or waiting, what's a better option?
Well, I think the better option is always getting the top-tier pick because history has proven. While we can talk about developmental types, Tom Brady being the most notable at number 199 overall, we can talk about Russell Wilson. You might even want to throw Colin Kaepernick because the 49ers went to a Super Bowl and 2 straight NFC championship games with him. Those were all later picks, but that is the exception to the rule. By and large, the really, really good quarterbacks in this league are taken very, very highly in the draft, and that's just the reality of the situation. So statistically, if you're looking for the long-term answer, and remember, the Eagles' mentality is they got Donovan McNabb. They were set at the position for a decade, and where was he taken? Number 2 overall. They think they need the next Donovan McNabb, and I think they're right in that. And to get that, you're probably going to have to go high in the draft. And the mentality is it's sort of not like the Sixers in the NBA. You don't want to be in the top 5 every single year. You want to, when you are in the top 10, you want to make a prudent decision, and you don't want to be back there the next year.
John, I agree with you, and that's why, though, you need your McNabb, you need your franchise guy, you need to grab that quarterback that can stabilize your franchise for a 10-year run. But I also feel that teams just swing wildly because everyone feels you need that quarterback. But I think the proof is in the pudding that taking those swings fails more often than not. And so many teams take a swing for a guy just because he's the best of a bad lot or he was the highest rated guy on that particular year. And it puts their organizations in disarray only because they swung for the first, second, or third best quarterback in a class that maybe isn't very good.
Yeah, it's dangerous. You see it time and time again. I think it might happen this year with Cook because there's a guy.
You think Cook's going to go in the first round?
I don't think so, but you never know. When you get desperate, teams tend to reach. A number of years ago, it was the Vikings with Christian Ponder, if you remember in that draft. A lot of people had him rated as a second-round pick. The Vikings were so desperate they took him at number 12 overall. That set that franchise back years and years and years. The same thing could happen to the Rams, for instance, if they reach for a guy like Cook earlier than they should. But the desperation is so great that you feel you need to do it. And as last week I talked about Brian Billick's great quote that need is the worst talent evaluator in sports. You should never just draft strictly on need, and it's a fine line. And the Eagles have to be very careful. Mm-hmm. If they don't think Paxton Lynch, for instance, is going to be and when I say going to be, nobody really knows. But if they don't think he's a top 10 level talent down the road, they shouldn't take him at number 8.
Yeah, I agree. John McMullen's with us. I'm very skeptical of all 3 guys. And I said in the open of today's show, John, I don't know if you agree with me, if Sam Bradford plays the way he did the final 7 games, they're fine. If he plays the way he did the final 7 games, but he's a little bit better, they're going to be pretty good. If he plays worse, then you move on. I don't think he plays worse. I think he plays at least at the level or better than he played last year. And if he plays at the level he did last year, the last 7 games, or gets better, then you don't need a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on the short term. I think they're looking more long term. And again, if they take a guy, even if somehow they're able to get up into the first pick for argument's sake, and drafted Carson Wentz. I don't think it's with the mentality that he's going to start week one. I think they want Sam Bradford to be the starter. And if he plays well, even with a potential number one overall pick, he's not going to be benched. The thought is you're getting your long-term future, and I think that's the Eagles' viewpoint. I don't think no matter if they get any of these three guys, I don't think they necessarily want him to start week one.
And I guess the thought process maybe there is we don't anticipate being in the top 10 in the draft again, so we got to get one while we're there. I could buy that maybe.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't want to be. You don't want to be in that top 10, top 5 Detroit Lions, Cleveland Browns consistently year after year after year. But that just means you're making bad decisions year after year after year. So the Eagles don't plan on being here a lot, and the fact that they are here, they're looking very, very heavily at trying to get the next Donovan McNabb, and it doesn't mean, remember, Donovan didn't start right away, and he was the number 2 overall pick. And they have Sam Bradford. They guaranteed him $22 million for 2016. They want him to be the starter, but I think it's prudent, and it's a very prudent realization that this guy's not the answer long term. And that's not to say he can't play well next season, or he didn't play well in the last 7 games, as you mentioned, because he did. But you're fooling yourself. That is fool's gold if you think Sam Bradford's going to be the quarterback of this team in 5 years.
I would agree with that comment as well. John's with us here, of course, every day at this time. We look at NFL news and notes. The story about Chip Kelly, good stuff from NJ.com, because I think it's a whopper. I mean, these quotes are unbelievable, John. I mean, he basically, let's see, anybody that Chip didn't want, that player's card got removed from the board and thrown in the trash. Those guys were never even in discussion. The scouts are looking around wondering, why am I even working? What the hell are we even here for? We put all the work in, and Chip changed everything. He took whoever he wanted to take. I mean, we've heard a lot of stuff, but this sounds like a circus. And you wonder how much impact did he have on all 3 drafts?
Yeah, I mean, he had a huge impact, and I think people look at Howie's admittance, and I put that in quotes, that he was responsible for Marcus Smith in the 2014 draft. And he said that when he got control back earlier this year. And I think it was just nothing more than he wanted to take leadership of this organization, of this team. Everybody knew Chip Kelly made the final decisions, and that included Marcus Smith. But I think there's a bigger thing here, and I wrote about it on the site today. And the bigger aspect of this is the Eagles have to move on from this nonsense. We all know that Chip Kelly was an autocrat. We all know now, with hindsight being 20/20, as it always is. He was a micromanager. He didn't work well with other people. But he's 3,000 miles away now. It's time to put that in the past and move forward. And you constantly hear these dribbles and drabs coming out of the South. And let's be honest, by these quotes, this is obviously a Howie Roseman ally, just by the nature of what was said. It's a guy who doesn't like Chip Kelly. And the people that don't like Chip like Howie. And it has to stop, because remember who hired Chip Kelly. And it was Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. They're the ones who bought the snake oil. So constantly bringing this stuff back up is just pointing out your own inadequacies, because you're the guys who hired them.
I agree. And look, I hate beating the dead horse, but I certainly think it's notable, number one. Number two, I think it gives us, if the quotes are in fact accurate, as you said, maybe this is a guy who just wants to burn Chip Kelly's bridges here. Who knows? But the quotes that I think are pretty that stand out, that make Kelly look like he's had his fingerprints on here more, and I think it gives us a little bit of a better connecting of the dots how everything went down, John, is everything hit the fan after that 2014 season. This is the quote. Chip left town immediately. Howie fires Gamble. Chip gets a hold of that news. He comes right back to the building, and he puts his foot down. So it sounds as if what many people believed happened. Kelly said, you fired my guy. Either you give me this or I'm out too, and that Lurie buckled.
Yeah, I think we've reported that before. And let me say, that's exactly what happened, and that's exactly how things formulate. The Tom Gamble aspect of this is what set everything off, because that was the one guy Chip trusted, and while he was gone, Howie fired him, and all of a sudden it set off the power struggle where Jeffrey Lurie sort of made that tortured experiment to hold Chip Kelly accountable. So I don't think there's any question about it. And by the way, the quotes, I'm not saying they're not true. They're 100% true. That's what Chip Kelly was. He was an autocrat, and he didn't listen to other people. My only point is that by Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie trying to spin this to make it favorable to them, they're also in turn pointing out their own weaknesses because, again, they're the guys who hired Chip Kelly. And in Lurie specifically, his instance, he's the guy who gave him the keys to the castle when he did pull the power struggle. Yes, when Chip is down at the NFL meetings and saying he never asked for it, we all know that's nonsense. We all know the way he is. We all know how he's astute at subterfuge, and he doesn't tell the truth. And he wanted the power. He still says to this day, Mike, he wasn't general manager of this team, which is a semantics-based defense. We all know because technically, yes, he didn't have that title, but he was in charge of every single player personnel move.
Yeah.
So in the general fan's mind, he's the general manager of the team. That's what we're trying to get across. Chip is very disingenuous. He's very dishonest. But that said, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman are the guys who bought the snake oil to begin with and let this guy loose on the organization.
Well, I think the why is this pertinent now is that Howie Roseman, I think, should be given some credit that he didn't become a distraction in all this. He just kind of got to the side and waited his turn. It was almost like he said, I know this is going to blow up, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Well, and also, as I've stated before, and I think Howie's done a wonderful job, as you know, Mike, since he's gotten back in charge of this organization. And from a personnel aspect, he's been worlds better than Chip Kelly. But there's also no question in my mind, he sort of helped Chip Kelly along in making bad decisions. And he happily did it.
Endorsed it.
And that speaks to the immaturity of both men, because they're high-profile people in a high-profile profession that make a lot of money, and they acted very, very immaturely, both of them.
John McMullen has more on the Eagles at 973ESPN.com. The draft, he's got his mock draft up. He's got players who would be in play at number 8. Check out the odds on that. Really good stuff. And who the Eagles, all the quarterbacks that they are visiting with. That's all at 973ESPN.com. All right, John. Good stuff.
Hey, thanks, Mike.